So before we dive into today's topic, Stephanie, I have to ask, did you see that squad member Ilhan Omar won the fucking primary vote in Minnesota last night?
It, no, but I mean, on the one hand, I'm not surprised. On the other hand, like, what the fuck? Who is voting for this radical person? I don't get it.
That was my question. And it's like she won by a pretty decent margin. And the candidate running against her, Dan Samuels, he is clearly also a Democrat, but just more moderate. And it's like this just blew my mind. But I guess it speaks to the fact that I'm sorry, Minnesota's like a lost cause. And I was reading in the New York Post that, Walls, being also from Minnesota, he once said about her, he said, quote, when I'm having a tough day, I think Ilhan Omar is a congresswoman, and that just brightens you up.
Yeah, it does the opposite for me. I wonder, they must have like a really big Muslim population because I know she is like very much appealing to that crowd. So maybe that's where these votes are coming from. I can't imagine anyone in their right mind though would vote for like all the destruction she caused there.
The whole thing, like, it's crazy to me. And it's like, I feel so sorry for the logical people of Minnesota. Same way I do with California. It's like, y'all need to move because your state is clearly awash. And I feel like there's no coming back for these people. It's cringy. But like, speaking of cringe, I have to call Kamala out for yet another cringy and misleading campaign ad. So I don't know if you saw this, but this is her most recent ad. And she's talking about how tough she's going to be on border security. So let's listen to the lies before I get into why I'm playing this clip. I hate when my phone locks me out. Hang on. Okay.
Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
There was
Okay.
no cackle at the end.
I know. I just, first of all, how can anyone like not see through that ad? It's complete bullshit. But at the beginning of the ad, there's camera footage showing the sheriff of Tulare County in California. His name's Mike Boudreau. And I guess he did not consent to being in this ad. So after it aired, he went on Fox and Friends and he was talking about how it was filmed during a press briefing where Kamala like showed up for a soundbite and he had to stand next to her. And then afterwards, she just like left, didn't shake anybody's hand. And he was like, it was totally disheartening that this ad would make people believe that he and other lawmakers who are in the ad actually support her because they don't. And so he put out a statement and he said, quote, Kamala Harris and law enforcement in California, we're very familiar with her and how she has done over the course of the years as a senator, as prosecutor, and as the attorney general. And I can tell you that ad is deceiving to say the least. We do not support Kamala Harris. She has a history of not supporting law enforcement. And I just wanted to come out and say that for me and Tulare County, the sheriff of Tulare County, looking out for victims, looking out for someone who's going to support criminal justice and law enforcement, that is represented by Donald Trump and not Kamala Harris, end quote. And I have to say, I fucking love when law enforcement leadership actually stands up and speaks the truth instead of playing the game of being politically correct, because that's usually what happens, especially in California. Like if this was LAPD, like he never would have said anything like this. So I just want to say thumbs up, Sheriff Boudreau. And like speaking of Trump, Stephanie, we obviously have to talk about the interview with Elon and Trump on Monday night, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know what? That ad, that's the first time I heard that. And I feel like it's such a slap in the face to Americans because she's basically saying, I think you're so fucking stupid that I can just put an ad out and say that I am tough on the border, even though clearly I haven't. Like it's just absolutely ridiculous. And I think it's gonna blow up in her face because what's happening now is all these media outlets and like Trump his campaign, they're pulling clips from not that long ago where she talked about the ICE being the KKK, which we talked about on this podcast, and having an open border. So like it's the whole thing is mind-blowing. Like, talk about chameleon. Like, just shows she has no platform. She's just like stealing Trump's talking points. But anyhow, yeah, the live stream of Trump and Elon Musk, holy shit. Probably the biggest live stream ever in terms of like how many people tuned in. Um, so it received a lot of attention before the event even started. So I want to go over that because this is freaking crazy. The European Union Commissioner sent a letter to Elon Musk ahead of the event, threatening him. He even posted a copy of the letter on X and said, quote, as there is a risk of amplification of potentially harmful content in connection with events with major audiences around the world, I sent this letter to Elon Musk. And so he posts the letter, and the letter goes into the EU's new law regulating illegal content and disinformation on large social media platforms, which is basically a nice way of saying they're prohibiting free speech, like we highlighted in Monday's episode. But the letter noted, quote, this includes ensuring X has measures in place to prevent the amplification of harmful content in connection with relevant events, including live streaming, which, if unaddressed, might increase the risk profile of X and generate detrimental effects on civic discourse and public security. Let me clarify that any negative effect of illegal content on X in the EU may be relevant in the context of an ongoing proceedings and of the overall assessment of X's compliance with EU law, end quote. All I can think of is like the nerve of this guy to try and censor a presidential nominee in America from speaking to the people. Like, how outrageous.
Yeah, well, this law being referred to in this open letter is the Digital Services Act. And what it does is it legally requires digital platforms to prevent the spread of any content that can incite violence, hate, or racism. And we already know the EU believes Trump is like the next Hitler. So, of course, they want to prevent him from being heard. And one of the alleged reasons for the letter was because of the recent unrest in the EU, as well as the current riots in England and Northern Ireland, which, even though the UK isn't part of the EU, this guy is Breton, he's the EU commissioner. His reasoning is that content related to US elections is accessible to EU users and therefore being amplified in EU jurisdiction, so they can't exclude potential spillover into EU nations, which really, this is just an attempt to censor Trump because you can bet if that interview was with Kamala, the EU would have had no problem whatsoever with it being aired in Europe. Like, this is literally blatant censorship. And whether or not you agree with regulations about restricting hate speech or, restricting inciting violence online, the bottom line is it's still censorship. And the core of our Constitution, censorship is like all or none. You can't pick and choose what you deem to be offensive. And I don't know if you know this, Stephanie, but this isn't Elon's first run-in with the EU when it comes to their censorship laws, because he's already facing like multi-million-dollar fines for violating DSA rules back in July. And he's like at odds with the prime ministers of Britain and Scotland because of censorship related to the riots that are occurring right now. And I'm starting to think he's like almost as hated by the elites as Trump.
Which makes me trust him more and more.
Right.
But you want to know what I fucking love about him is he doesn't give a shit. It's really hard to threaten like the richest man in the world. And so Elon Musk gave an epic response to this EU commissioner's post with a meme that had the words, quote, and literally fuck your own face, end quote. And he captioned it with this. He says, to be honest, I really wanted to respond with this Tropic Thunder meme, but I would never do something so rude and irresponsible. I was dying. I'm like, you know what? He has like such a good sense of humor. And part of me wonders if like the EU is trying to get it to a point where they can prohibit X, because that's probably the only place where the people in Europe are still getting somewhat of the truth. We know they already took over TikTok and now TikTok's censoring everything. So I bet they're trying to do that with X. But ex-CEO Linda Yaccarino posted on X in response to this letter, calling it a, quote, unprecedented attempt to stretch a law intended to apply in Europe to political activities in the US. It also patronizes European citizens, suggesting they are incapable of listening to a conversation and drawing their own conclusions, end quote. This is so typical of the left. They did this with COVID. They did this with the Hunter Biden laptop. Like, oh, that's dangerous information. Why not just let the people use their educated opinion? Like, it's so crazy. And then Trump campaign spokesperson Stephen Chung said in a statement that the EU should mind their own business instead of trying to meddle in the US presidential election. He said, quote, only in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's America can an undemocratic foreign organization feel emboldened enough to tell this country what to do. They know that a President Trump victory means America will no longer be ripped off because he will smartly utilize tariffs and renegotiated trade deals that puts America first. Let us be very clear. The European Union is an enemy of free speech and has no authority of any kind to dictate how we campaign, end quote. So freaking spot on. And look at how many countries are walking all over us thanks to Biden and Kamala. So we've got the EU now. Trump mentioned during the live stream how because of Biden's weak leadership, Russia invaded Ukraine, Hamas attacked Israel, and every country opened its prisons to send its worst people here through our open border, and how none of that would have ever happened under Trump. No one messed with us. None of these countries did that while he was president. Like even the craziest of them, like North Korea, even stopped messing with us. And that is the difference between a strong president and a weak one. So once again, like I think the left is just hurting themselves with this nonsense. Now, when it comes to the actual live stream event, I didn't get to listen to the whole thing at first because it wouldn't let me in. And so I was on Twitter and I see tons of people, like all sorts of big accounts posting the same thing. And so Elon responded not long after it started that there was a cyber attack on X. And he said that they had tested the platform with 8 million people to make sure that it would work. And my guess is that there were just so many people trying to get on that it overwhelmed the servers. So I ended up watching it through Benny Johnson's live stream. He alone, Benny Johnson, had 500,000 people just on his live stream alone. And there were a ton of influencers doing just that. So there's no telling, but it definitely was an extraordinary number of people showing up to listen to this. And according to X, they posted that between 7:47 p.m. and 10:47 p.m., President Donald Trump's space post received 73 million views. During the same period, there were 4 million posts about Elon Musk and President Trump's conversation on X, generating a total of 998 million views. That is insane. Nearly a billion people trying to tune into this. No wonder the EU and the mainstream media are freaking out. But then you have TikTok, where the older millennial shared the live stream because he was able to get into it. So he starts sharing it on TikTok. Within 45 seconds, TikTok took it down and has now revoked his access to go live. Like we're talking about an influencer with millions of followers that now has like a ban on his live account, all because he tried to share this. Like it is so wild how TikTok started out as this platform of truth where people could share anything without censorship. And Twitter was the platform of mass censorship. Now the two have totally flip-flopped, where TikTok is policing everything and X seems to be the only place where we can speak freely. It's crazy.
Yeah, we need to have like another pro-patriotic, pro-freedom billionaire that can buy TikTok and say like
Yeah,
fuck you to the censorship. But
right.
What's awesome is like all of this negative commentary from the MSM has really only made even more people want to watch the interview now, because after the technical glitches that they had, like all the MSM outlets were saying, oh, this is a tech disaster and it's a total failure. And like Elon's response was awesome. He wrote a post on X where he basically like called out the media as NPCs and mocked them. So he posted like a bunch of their headlines. And then he wrote, quote, a wall of negative headlines was so predictable. They're such NPCs. All this does is drive even more people to listen to the conversation themselves and realize how much the legacy media lies to them, end quote. Like, I fucking love this guy. A year ago, if you asked me what I thought about Elon Musk, I would have said, like, you know what? I'm not sure. But he has become one of my favorite, like, people to follow.
Same. I wasn't sure about him at first either, but all throughout the interview, I kept saying, I love this guy. Like he was spot on and he's so intelligent. Like why are we not listening to him? Like we should be listening to people who have such a good take on the economy and what's happening in the world. And this guy is like literally a genius and the media tries to like they were literally making fun of the fact that he has Asperger's. Like, could you imagine? Like, look at what they did to Trump. Trump didn't even make fun of anyone. They tried to make it seem like he was making fun of someone with a disability. They ran with that for years, but then they openly are making fun of Elon Musk. Like, are you freaking kidding me? But guess what? CNN and MSNBC are tanking. They are tanking. They are like nearly done. So, of course, they're gonna like go out with a bang. But anyhow, Elon brought up the media narrative of Trump where like, they try to say he's some dictator and he was just saying it so plainly, like that's not true. And I can tell you why it's not true because the first 4 years, Trump was treated horribly by the media, yet he never kicked them out of the White House. He showed up daily to talk to them. He never tried to ban or censor them. And that's very telling. Like, which party is refusing to talk to the media? Which party is pushing censorship? Clearly the left. Like this is, the true dictator is Kamala and Biden. It's not Trump. And I feel like the way that Elon said it in the live stream, it was so simple that like anyone could understand what he's getting at. And I just loved that he threw it out there because he doesn't give a shit.
Well, speaking of White House media and censorship, I don't know if you saw this, but before the interview, there was a White House press briefing, and one of the reporters, who's from the Washington Post, his name is Cleve Wootson Jr., and he was asking KJP about the interview that was going to be happening, and he basically suggested that the White House should censor it. And he said, misinformation on X isn't just a campaign issue, it's an America issue. And he asked her if Biden is doing anything to stop the interview and intervene in the spreading of misinformation. So I want to play the clip of his question and KJP's response. And then I was listening to Real AF this morning. And so I'm going to play the conversation that Andy and DJ had afterwards.
But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's an American issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that or stopping the spread of that or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, no, I know you've heard us talk about this many times from here about the responsibilities that social media platforms have when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. You don't have anything to read out from here about specific ways that we're working on it, but we believe that they have the responsibility. These are private companies, so we're also mindful of that too. But look, it is. I think it is incredibly important to call that out as you're doing. I just don't have any specifics on what we have been doing internally as it relates to the interviews, and that's something that I'm tracking, and I'm sure the president's not tracking it either.
Okay, Stephanie, before I continue on with this clip, she said, it's incredibly important to call that out as you're doing. I just don't have any specifics on what we've been doing internally. Okay, which says to me that she's lying, because all this administration ever talks about is misinformation and disinformation being a danger to democracy. So to say like she has no specifics, that's saying something, because clearly they have something in the works. What do you think?
I'm sorry, but how can he say that the White House should intervene in the spreading of misinformation when the live stream hadn't even started? How do they know there's going to be misinformation? And let's look at who's spreading misinformation. Who is lying and saying that, they're tough on the border when really they've had a completely open border? Kamala. Like, who's the one that lied about the Hunter Biden laptop? Who lied about COVID? Like, all of these people that have been pushing misinformation are the ones spreading misinformation. And this proves it, because they're trying to say, oh, this is misinformation before the event even takes place. You have no idea what they're going to talk about. Like, wake up, people. This is all it's all a setup. Like, they're all trying to censor us like it's fucking Venezuela.
Yeah, exactly. So now I
Sorry, I
want to
got a little
play.
heated there.
No, I love it. I love it when you get mad. It's funny because my husband sometimes he's like, Stephanie sounds like happy mad. He goes, and you sound like mad mad. And I'm like, no, no, sometimes, especially when it's about kids or something like that, I go, she's mad mad.
Oh
So,
yeah, I got some rage in me right now.
I know. So I want to play the rest of this clip because I thought their conversation was interesting.
Yes, we should not allow people to talk about anything that doesn't go along with what we say and what we believe. And anybody who has a dissenting point of view or a question or a statement is clearly propagating misinformation, and we must stop it. Right? What's that sound like to you?
Sounds like communism
Yeah.
to me.
These people are already showing their fucking cards, bro. And they've got the NPCs who are behind them who can't fucking tie their own shoes, being like, yeah, censor them. Okay, well then what are you going to do when they start coming after you? Because that's who they come after next. Yeah. They come after the useful idiots. You're the useful idiot because you can't think critically. And because you don't like Trump and because you don't like Elon, you believe that they should be censored. And that makes you part of their little army. That's what they're counting on. But what these people fail to understand is that the minute that they get in power, complete control, which, dude, if Kamala gets in with this fucking Walls guy, listen, these people are fucking openly communist. All right. They're trying to redefine her policies now to look moderate because they understand that far left shit doesn't work right now. But promise you, once they get in, it's right back to that. And what these people fail to understand, because they're so low IQ, they just are. You know, people like to say, oh, these people on the right are low IQ, or these people, if they're not with all this stuff, like, look, dude, you're the dumb motherfucker. Look at your life. Okay, we'll talk about how low IQ you are. You're fucking broke. You depend on the government for everything. You don't contribute to anything. You want my shit and everybody else's shit that they all worked real hard for, and you think you're the fucking high IQ person? No, you're the problem here, okay? And these people fail to realize history because they're so fucking stupid and so lazy that not only can they not provide for themselves or even go out and attempt to provide for themselves, and they want to vote your shit into their pockets. These people can't understand history, okay? And in history, they take people like you right after they get in power and they fucking kill them because you are useless, you don't contribute to anything, you don't produce anything. And in communism, that's the whole idea. Everybody's supposed to produce, but it doesn't work that way. And these people are putting themselves in danger by rooting for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So spot on. And this made me think of what I was thinking about yesterday, because I listened to Tucker's new interview with Dave Smith, which I fucking love. Dave Smith. He's
Yes.
amazing. And I had one of those like aha moments, because he was talking about Kamala, and he's like, everyone's saying she's super, extremist leftist and super liberal. And he's like, no, she's not. She's using those words to appeal to the useful idiots. But in reality, she's the establishment. She stands for the elites, the establishment. Like, that's it. It's the elites versus the people, the establishment versus the people. And that got me thinking, because yesterday I was at the gym, and they were playing the Hunger Games. There's like this cinema room and the Hunger Games was on. So I was watching that and it dawned on me. I'm like, holy shit, these people in the Capitol sitting on their thrones are like Biden and Kamala and Tim Walz watching the world burn while they're, living their high life, making money off of it. And why is it that when we watch movies like that, like the Hunger Games, we root for the people, we root for the resistance, the people that rise up against the establishment. But then in real life, you have all these people that do the opposite of that. Like, wake the fuck up. It is the establishment. They don't give a shit about anyone. They don't give a shit about the people on the left. They don't give a shit about the LGBTQ community. They don't care. They're all about power and money and greed. Sorry, I just went along with what I was thinking yesterday.
No, you're 100% correct. And like I was having this conversation with Aaron the other day, and I said like something to the effect of like, when did we go from a country that believes in freedom to a country of people that just want free shit?
Yeah.
Because like that's where we are right now. And
You know,
it's
it makes me think. I think Elon Musk answered that with a meme the other day where he said that hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. And that's where
yeah.
we're at right now. And so now he's like, we need strong men to like get us back to good times. And I think that's what it is. We're weak. We're weak and we got too comfortable. And now, this shit's happening.
Yeah, and now we live in the land of censorship and just yeah, okay. Let me get back on track because otherwise I'm going to go off in the weeds. But later in that same podcast that I was just talking about with Andy and DJ, they were talking about how like, the DDoS attack that occurred when they tried to start the live stream. They were saying like it was clearly an attempt by, you know, who whoever the fuck is in charge. Is it Biden, Harris, Waltz, like whoever the fuck is in charge of our administration to prevent the interview from happening? And Andy was saying like the left is clearly afraid of Trump winning because if Kamala was truly ahead in the polls and as popular as the MSM is making her out to be, then they wouldn't be spending millions of dollars for paid actors and influencers to promote her, and they wouldn't be worried about Elon doing an interview with Trump. And he said exactly what you and I have been talking about ever since Kamala became the unelected candidate about how, like, they're falsely promoting her to make it seem like she's getting close to being neck and neck with Trump so that when they steal the election, it's going to seem more believable and then maybe the people won't revolt.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the play that they're hoping for. But the problem is, every time they try to attack Trump or stop something, he gets more popular and people get more pissed off. So I think it blows up in their face. Like, I don't think it's working as well as they think it is.
Well, Kamala's campaign is getting called out on something else. And I don't know if you saw this because I saw it right before we got on the podcast. The New York Post reported this morning that Kamala's campaign has been like silently editing news headlines in Google searches to make it look like the news outlets are on her side. So there was an Axios report that came out yesterday where there's nearly a dozen publishers that had their headlines altered with a sponsorship link and a paid for by Harris for presidential campaign like banner on it, those sponsorship banners, without the knowledge of the news outlets, just to make it look like they were supporting Kamala. This was happening to The Guardian, Reuters, CBS News, the Associated Press, PBS, like all of these huge mainstream outlets. And if you guys want to see it, you can check it out on the New York Post article. It shows like several of these articles and the sponsorship link. Like, my question is, how is this not illegal, right? Well, according to Google, this tactic is, quote, misleading, but it's not a violation of their policies because the fake ads are prominently labeled as sponsored and therefore they're easily distinguishable from search results. Like, is this some shady ass shit or what?
I mean, this is state-sponsored media. This is what they do
Yes.
in communist countries. I mean, that is really scary. This is complete propaganda. How is this being allowed to happen in America? I like this is insane. This needs to go to the fucking Supreme Court. Like this is such a a communist fucking thing to do.
Yeah. And so, of course, Kamala's campaign, like getting back to the interview with Trump and Elon, like they had to slam it, right? Like we know she has no actual policies to stand on. And they're still clinging to this narrative that Trump is going to destroy the world with Project 2025. Like, has it not been proven time and time again that that is not his fucking policy? Like, how
They
many
don't
times?
care. They feel like they'll just lie enough times until people are so conditioned that they just believe it and don't question it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, after the live stream, her campaign spokesperson, Joseph Costello, he said, quote, Donald Trump's extremism and dangerous Project 2025 agenda is a feature, not a glitch of his campaign, which was on full display for those unlucky enough to listen in tonight during whatever that was on X.com. Trump's entire campaign is in service of people like Elon Musk and himself, self-obsessed rich guys who will sell out the middle class and who cannot run a live stream in the year 2024, end quote. Like, okay, yeah, Trump and Musk are the ones selling out the middle class. Like, you can't make up the level of hypocrisy. Like, it's just fucking unreal.
It is. And I think most people see through that bullshit. And I think that's why there were a billion people trying to tune into this live stream event, because they're not buying the whole Kamala narrative. And, back to the live stream, Trump mentioned how there's no way Kamala would ever show up to something like this and how she's dodging reporters left and right. JD Vance has been making a great point of this as well, because he's been talking to the press nonstop, along with doing interviews on unfriendly leftist networks like CNN. And he mentioned how he's treating this campaign like a job interview and has a duty to speak to the American people and prove to them why he's the best one for the job, even if it means going on networks like CNN, where he's under a ton of scrutiny. And you contrast that with Kamala and Tim Walz, who haven't done a single press conference or sit down interview. They run away from reporters and they only speak at scripted events. So it's like, okay, you can talk shit about this live stream event all you want. Why don't you go do it, Kamala? Then it could
Well,
be
exactly.
fair and square.
Well, Elon actually extended the invitation to Kamala to have an interview just like he did with Trump. And has she taken him up on it? Nope. Instead, her campaign just wants to claim that Elon is trying to control our democracy by having a conversation with a presidential candidate. And like, if Kamala is so concerned about Trump being a threat on democracy, why wouldn't she go on X? It's one of the most popular social media platforms in the world. They have over 600 million users. Like, shouldn't she want to plead her case for democracy? But it's like she knows she can't, because then the world would see she can't speak intelligently in public without a script or a teleprompter. And we are now going on 24 days since Kamala became the unelected Democrat presidential nominee, and she still hasn't given a press conference. She won't even do an interview with one of the bought and paid for MSM outlets. So it's like there's no way she's going to do an interview with Elon Musk.
And I think most people are smart enough to realize that. But it's like she is avoiding the media, yet they're still supporting her and manipulating the narrative in her favor. So here's a perfect example. A guy named Tim Murtaugh posted this on X, and he says, only sharp-eyed readers will be able to spot the difference in the coverage of the two proposals. Okay. So this is the first post, which was this is from CBS News that posted this. Former President Donald Trump's vow to stop taxing tips would cost the federal government up to $250 billion over 10 years, according to a nonpartisan watchdog group. Okay. Then this is the same network, CBS News, that posts this. Vice President Kamala Harris is rolling out a new policy position, saying she'll fight to end taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers. See how it's the same thing, because now Kamala is stealing Trump's talking points. So if Trump is so dangerous and so bad and he's a dictator, why is she stealing all of his talking points and things that he wants to do? But this just goes to show, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, the news is going to spin it so Trump looks bad and Kamala looks like a fucking hero. And it's like so blatant. And that's why I think all their ratings are tanking. So Elon Musk mentioned this, and he said how he brought up the assassination attempt and how Trump, stood up with his fist in the air after being shot, and how that was like such an act of courage. And he said, in a situation like that, you can't fake courage. Again, contrast that with Kamala, who's constantly hiding, still hasn't made clear any policies that she's running on. And it's clear who has the courage and leadership to lead this country. That person's obviously Trump. And Elon explained how in the past he was a huge supporter of Obama. He's actually never voted Republican. But he was saying if we do not vote for Trump, it's going to be detrimental to our country. And he said that Trump is the path to prosperity and Kamala is not. That's saying a lot, right? The richest guy in the world who's incredibly intelligent is saying we need to vote for Trump if we want to save this country. And just like you said earlier, how they were trying to say like, oh, these rich guys that destroy the middle class. No, because guess what? When they prosper, we prosper. These are the people that employ the people like us. Like, it's just crazy. One side wants us to be prosperous. The other side is trying to put us in so much debt we'll never get out of it. And so blatant, but no one, I mean, there's people still buying this bullshit, I guess. So I want to bring up something really interesting that Trump said. And I think it's a great point. I think he needs to talk about this nonstop between now and November. And that's his plan to get rid of the Department of Education and give that funding to the states so they can choose how they want to use those funds for education in their state. And I think it's a great idea. I'm saying this as a mom of 3 with kids in school, because ever since the Department of Education was formed, billions of dollars have been given to them, and not one single metric has improved in our education system. Not one. Things have gotten so much worse. And it's turned into this like indoctrination camp from the woke left. And he explained how overturning Roe v. Wade was about that. He said he doesn't think that the federal government should be able to dictate abortion or education, and how these are things that each state should have the power to decide. That sure doesn't sound like a dictator to me. What do you think, Tara?
Yep, not at all. I completely agree with Trump's take on the Department of Education. And this was one of the other things that Andy was talking about on Real AF this morning. And he was saying it's been since 1980 that there hasn't been a single statistical measurable category showing that the US education system has gotten better. Like in every single category, we just continue to do worse and worse every year. And honestly, I can't imagine having kids in public school right now. So I don't know how parents deal with this, but I was reading an article in The Balance yesterday, and it was evaluating the US education system, comparing it to other countries. And it pointed out the International Institute for Management Development's World Competitiveness Center. I guess they rank countries based on their education system. And they recently ranked the United States as 12th in their 2024 competitiveness report. We were number 1 in 2018. That's less than 6 years ago. And now we're 12th. Like this, and they also said this is the lowest that the United States has ever ranked in their annual system.
And look at what changed in the education system during that time frame. Instead of reading, writing, and arithmetic, they're learning about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're talking about which pronouns they should use. Like, obviously, it's having a negative impact on our children. And that's why it blows my mind that there are so many moms out there that aren't like doing something about it. They still want to vote for Kamala. Like, it's absolutely asinine. But another surprising thing that I wanted to mention, so Trump brought this up on the live stream. I don't know if this was planned out or if he just like went off the cuff, but he said that he will make Elon Musk the head of a government efficiency committee to eliminate all the government waste we have in our bloated bureaucracy. Now, Trump posted this idea afterwards, giving a little more detail, saying that it would likely eliminate trillions of dollars in wasteful spending and how there isn't a better technical person for the job. And I think it's a brilliant idea because we know how many ridiculous things our government is spending money on. And just look at what Elon did when he bought Twitter. Like, he eliminated a ton of waste by firing almost everyone. And the media said that Twitter would go under with such a small team. but it actually improved performance. It improved like every metric. And so this is exactly what we need in our government. And I got really excited about that. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I don't know if this was planned or coordinated ahead of time, but I thought it was a pretty genius move by Elon to bring up creating a government efficiency commission and then to like volunteer to help with it. And Trump was totally on board. And of course, Kamala's campaign had to jump on this as a negative, right? And so they posted on X, quote, Trump praises billionaire Elon Musk for firing workers who are striking for better pay and working conditions, end quote. Like, no, what he did was fire people who didn't want to do their fucking job right. And this is exactly what needs to be done with our government: clean house and get rid of all the useless trash.
Absolutely. And I think that most Americans know how wasteful our government is and would agree that we need to clean house. I think people have been waiting for that. They're hungry for that. And we'll leave it with one last thing that Trump mentioned on the live stream, which was Reagan's question. Are you better off now than you were when Trump was president? Simple question. I feel like it should tell you all you need to know. So, anyhow, I felt like this is such a good episode to like re-energize everybody. So I hope everyone's left feeling good after all those depressing episodes we do sometimes. But just know this whole media narrative of Kamala is fake. Almost 1 billion people were tuning in to hear from Trump. And I think that's a really good indicator that he can actually win come November. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here on Friday.